Nice to see you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me on this Substack Live all the way from Australia. Hey, T, how you going? Good to see you again. Um, so obviously I'm from Australia. So for people who haven't been on my Substack Live before, if you're concerned about my accent, it's actually from Australia. So don't be concerned. It's perfectly normal to have an Australian talk about American politics all the time. It's very normal, in fact, very normal. Thank you so much. Hi, Dave from California. It's good to see you again. It's good to see all the regulars coming back. Um, there's a couple of things I want to talk about today. Obviously, the shutdown was a big thing. Um, which yeah. So, I mean, my thoughts on the shutdown is I don't really understand what the whole point of what the Democrats were doing. Um, if they were just going to basically do what they're doing now, because they could have done this from day one. Hi, hi back, Joe. Thanks, Dave. They could have done this from day one. As far as I can see, um, there is now in saying that I feel like the Democratic Party and the establishment, like people like Chuck Schumer, and that even though Chuck Schumer voted no, I have a feeling that he was all for it. He was supporting it, and he was just voting no to sort of cover his ass, because he's the leader. He didn't really seem he didn't really seem that upset about losing the vote. In fact, I kind of feel like he was relieved that he lost a vote. So, I mean, again, I just think that I think there's a big divide between the establishment Democrats and its actual base, and they're not really. And we saw that with Zoran Mandami. And again, I don't think Zoran Mandami. I'm not one of those people who thinks, oh, Zoran Mandami would be the president of the United States if he was born in America, because I think I think the Democratic Party is both moderates and progressives. I think it's a Big Tent party. That's what I think it is. And because America is a very big country, you have different states. You've got 340 million people. I don't think you can have just one type of politics representative. I don't think you can just have progressives, and I don't think you can just have centre left or moderates, because your country's too, it's too diverse to just have one. But I think the actual base itself is probably more progressive than Chuck Schumer, and it's pretty obvious that's what we're seeing at the moment. They're not representing their base in a sense. The only positive thing that I can see about this is that they put healthcare on the map. Before the shutdown, almost nobody was talking about healthcare. It was like everything was about cost of living or Trump being an authoritarian or all these sort of things, like a whole bunch of different things. But a lot of people weren't talking about healthcare. It's like hi, Corin, nice to see you again. It's like people stopped talking about healthcare for a very long time. And I think, so I think the only positive for me is I feel like healthcare is now something that's being talked about by American people, by politicians, and I think that's a positive. The other positive I think it is that if even though there's going to be another vote in December or something like that, I mean, it's obvious now that Democrats are not going to do another shutdown because why would you do another shutdown? It doesn't make any sense, right? It's also obvious that Trump has no limits to how many people he could hurt. I mean, this is the kind of it's been normalized now, but I think the fact that Trump was willing to throw poor people under the bus to win this sort of war, at least the early stages of it, is quite alarming. Like he was, he was willing to throw the people on SNAP benefits, food stamps, all that sort of stuff. He almost was happy about it. And the big difference for me as an outsider between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is that on the one hand, you had the Democratic Party who were concerned about people losing their SNAP benefits, all that sort of stuff. And the Republican Party was almost like they knew that the Democrats were concerned about it, so they used it as wedge politics. In fact, Trump almost said that once. Trump said, well, if you do the shutdown, a lot of the benefits, a lot of the policies that the Democrats like, we're going to target. So he deliberately targeted um, policies and benefits that he knew Democrats would find it hard to sort of stomach and to go along with it. And he didn't care. It didn't bother him at all to do that. He was willing to throw. In fact, a lot of the conversation around MAGA media was there's too many people on SNAP benefits. There's too many people getting food stamps, all this sort of stuff. So they were using it as an advantage. They were using it as a way to actually get rid of it or diminish it or make it so less people can get onto it. So it's a very strange thing to see the president of the United States, who was voted in, right? Voted in because he had support of the working class people. I mean, to put this in perspective, in 2024, more working class people voted for Trump than they did for Kamala Harris. Trump shows up pretending to work at McDonald's, and Kamala Harris actually did work at McDonald's, and it's almost like Trump got more credit for pretending to work at McDonald's for 15 minutes as a political stunt. And I feel that kind of encapsulates the whole Trump movement, that stunt where basically he pretends to be a McDonald's worker. That's basically Trump. He just pretends to be someone who supports the working class people. And unfortunately, a lot of people fell for that. And then what we're seeing now as a result of that, I think where Trump is getting it wrong is that, and I think he's getting it wrong in a big way, is that the things he got away with last year in 2024 pretends the best. That's right, Coral. That's right. I think what he got away with last year was because he wasn't the incumbent. He was in the opposition. So everything that was going on with inflation, the economy, all that sort of stuff, was being blamed on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. This year, he can't do that. So he can't blame inflation or cost of living on Kamala Harris or Joe Biden because he's been the president now for like 10 months. And nobody believes that because there's a lot of people who don't follow politics very closely in America. And they're not watching politics like you and I are. They base who they vote on, who they're voting on, or who they're going to vote on based on their everyday living experience. So Trump can say cost of living is down, groceries are down, but they're not listening to that. They're going out every day. They've got children. They've got 3 or 4 children. They've got 2 jobs. They're too busy to watch politics or listen to politics. And they're going to the grocery shop and they're seeing every day, right? They're seeing all the time that grocery prices are going up, not going down. And that's what they're voting on. And so Trump can't get away with his lies because people are living, you can get away with lies when you're in the opposition because everything gets blamed on the other person, but you can't when you're actually the incumbent. So Trump's in a lot of trouble here because, which I think is a good thing. So I think he thought that he could, with the shutdown and SNAP and all that sort of stuff, I think he thought he could get away with it the way he got away with things like that last year. But this year it's a completely different field. It's not the same environment that it was. So he's come, he's talking about the East Wing all the time, how he's going to fix the East Wing and make it really nice as a ballroom. He did a Great Gatsby party. I mean, people are starting to notice, right, that he doesn't give a shit about poor people and people who are struggling. It's become really obvious that's the case. So from that point of view, I think he's in really big trouble. I think the economy was always going to be the thing that was going to be his downfall. As much as I like to think that him being an authoritarian or, him doing, I think that stuff does matter. I think people are seeing him for who he really is. But I think the number one thing that's going to get MAGA to basically collapse, even Marjorie Taylor Greene is now Paul Cusack. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene now is breaking ranks over a lot of this. Trump was asked about her breaking away in the Oval today. Yeah, I saw that, Paul. I did. Yeah, yeah. I think, in my opinion, um, Marjorie Taylor Greene is still, to me, um, she believes all this crazy stuff, right? And she every day she will go out and talk about chemtrails and crazy stuff. Um, she was being interviewed on Megyn Kelly, who's also become like she was a Fox News person, but now she's online. She's become like a really something about when people go from like mainstream media to online, they become really conspiratorial and very online. The other person is Tucker Carlson, right? Tucker Carlson is the same. And so a lot of what I think is happening in Marjorie Taylor Greene is I think she's going to run for president in 2028. I think Tucker Carlson is going to run for president in 2028. And I think there's a whole bunch of people who are now distancing themselves from Trump because remember last year with Kamala Harris, um, Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris basically, um, when she was interviewed, she was asked, "Oh, look, um, would you distance yourself from Joe Biden?" Do you remember that last year? And she said, "No, I wouldn't." And that was a big. I'm not saying that she lost the election because of that, but her not being able to distance herself from everything Joe Biden did, I think, was bad because you don't have to throw someone under the bus to say, look, I would have done this differently, or maybe done the border different, whatever, you know what I mean? I think that you have to distance yourself to some degree from the previous person. Otherwise, it's like, well, why don't we just vote for Joe Biden? You know, so I think what's happening now is a lot of the MAGA people are seeing the writing on the wall. Trump, I do not believe that Trump is going to run again in 2028. I think he's too old. I don't think he wants to run. He's basically falling asleep. He's still got 3 years to go. There's no way in hell he wants to do another 7 years. I really don't think he's going to do it. I think he'll pardon himself. He'll pardon everyone around him to protect themselves. But I don't think he's going to run again. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is seeing the writing on the wall. I think she's going to run again in 2028. I think Tucker Carlson is. So I think all these people that we're seeing pushing away from him, from Trump, are basically just positioning themselves for 2028. Because at the end of the day, I don't think MAGA, or Trump is going to be as popular in 2028 as he was last year. I think his popularity is going to keep going down. And if you basically stick yourself as a Trump loyalist like JD Vance is, I think JD Vance is going to be in trouble in 2028 if he runs because he's so loyal to Trump that unless he distances himself between now and then, I think that's going to be a big problem for him because he will just become super unpopular, right? He'll become super unpopular, like So I think the big contenders are going to be Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson is really, I think the way he's going to position himself in 2028 is that he's going to be, I'm the real America first. I'm the real America first, and Trump wasn't. Trump didn't stick to his America first policies, which is don't intervene overseas. And that's what Tucker Carlson keeps saying. That's why he criticizes Trump. He says Trump shouldn't be intervening overseas. And there's a lot of MAGA people who don't like Trump getting involved in conflicts overseas. So that's a big part of the MAGA movement who don't like that sort of thing. So I think from that point of view, I think Tucker has a pretty good stance. I think where Tucker Carlson has really lost it, in my opinion, is I just can't see him being taken seriously in 2028. The other day, he was being interviewed by Megyn Kelly. She's got I think I said before, she was on Fox News, and then basically she went on. She went on to she interviewed Tucker Carlson the other day on her show, and Tucker Carlson started talking about. He said this before, but this is the first time he's kind of gone on more about it. He basically said, "Well, just so you know, a couple of months ago, I was attacked by a demon, right?" And he's not talking about internal demons or people struggling with mental illness. He actually meant that, and they're not talking about that he was asleep. He said that he was awake and demons, actual like demons from the Bible, came and attacked him. Right, they really attacked him, and he ended up with claw marks all over his body. Right, so he's saying this on Megyn Kelly's show, and Megyn Kelly is just like nodding along, like it's completely normal conversation. Like it's nothing, like he's not really saying this. She's going, "Oh, really? Wow, that's incredible." So these demons were like just attacking you, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah." They were started like clawing my body, and I could tell that it was. And then he started talking about. Then he started saying, "Look, I think I know why the demons were attacking me. I'm going to be demons versus the space lasers in 20 hours." This is Paul. This is the thing. Like, this is hilarious. Everybody in the MAGA movement now, in MAGA media, they're lunatics. Like Trump has, I wrote an article about this on my newsletter. Trump has normalized, everyone always talks about how Trump has normalized lying. He's normalized, um, he's normalized craziness. He's normalized a whole bunch of different things, right? But but the biggest thing I think is normalized is that you can now be a online media person and you can just say the most batshit crazy things in the world and almost nobody cares. It's almost like it's not a big deal to say crazy things anymore. Could you imagine, like you got Candace Owens? Candace Owens is going around, right, saying that Candace Owens going around saying that Tyler Robinson was killed by somebody in Turning Point USA because he was starting to question the Israel war. No, I don't believe that. Or it was Israel that killed it again. Just 'cause she's going around saying that Emmanuel Macron's wife was born a man, right? And like they're now suing her because like and she's been on this. Emmanuel Macron's wife is a man now for about a year. Like she's obsessed. Like what a weird thing to be obsessed about, right? Um, Tucker Carlson, she said that, her and Tucker Carlson talk about how Barack Obama was gay, how Emmanuel Macron is gay, how Justin Trudeau is gay. Like they're obsessed with calling all these like people gay. Like it's a very strange thing. And so you got Candace Owens, you've got Tucker Carlson, you've got Megyn Kelly, you got Marjorie Taylor Greene, right, who's still going around just past Senate and 8 Dem defectors heads to House, right? Yeah. Well, Levy, I'm pretty sure that, yeah, I know. Looks like they did cave, and it looks like they caved pretty badly. Yeah. Um, yeah. So again, so it's just a weird environment now in the MAGA movement where you've got all these really crazy people and nobody really cares. Nobody really sort of thinks a big deal about it and things like that. But him going on about that he was attacked by all these demons and everything was a very, very strange thing. Yeah, they parody but seemed dangerous and then encourage more loony right. Yeah, exactly. I know. Exactly, Carl. It's a very strange, for me, it's a very strange world where, like, if you think back to 10 years ago, 11 years ago, before Trump was big, and before Trump was like talking about QAnon and all that stuff, very few people, right? Very few people back then made a big deal about, would say things like this, right? If someone before like 2014, 2015, with now remember Tucker Carlson has the number one podcast in the United States, like for politics. So he's really big. He's not some fringe person. Could you imagine someone saying, "Look, I was attacked by demons." Here's my thing. I don't know whether he's making it up or he's lost his mind, but I do know Tucker Carlson has 4 dogs. So I'm guessing that one of those dogs, while he was sleeping, scratched his back, right? Or whatever happened, something happened with his dogs and they scratched his back or something. And he interpreted that as demons attacking him, right? So yeah, it's a very strange world. So for me, like, I just feel like the Democrats need to be the party of sanity, and it's really important that they are the party of sanity. Um, but yeah, like going back to the shutdown, I really feel like the Democrats really did cave here in a bad way, and they caved in a way that I think um, a lot of people, when you see those polls, there's a lot of polls been going around, and the polls say that the Democrats are not very popular. And I don't think it's that the Democrats are not popular in terms of people would prefer to vote for. Hi, Donna, nice to see you again. I don't think it's that the Democrats, for me, those polls are not really, they don't really give you the whole picture. But a lot of MAGA will say, hey, those polls show that the Democrats are really unpopular. I don't think they ever did. I think that what they show is a lot of people in the Democratic Party, or a lot of the base, they don't like the Democrats being so weak, right? They want the Democrats to stand up for themselves. So it's not like when people say, I don't like the Democratic Party, it's not necessarily they wouldn't vote for a Democrat, because we know that they would vote for a Democrat, because during the current elections, the Democrats did fantastic. They did fantastic in Virginia, New York, New Jersey, and they overperformed, right? So it shows that the Democrats, and whenever they do polling, for example, on if it's a generic sort of left wing person versus a generic right wing person, um, it's always the Democrats who do a lot better. Yeah. So I think from that point of view, it does show that the Democrats are way more popular than them. But I think the problem in the Democratic Party is that um, people people find them hi Donna, people find them too weak, and that's what we saw this. They want the Democrats to be stronger. They don't want the Chuck Schumers and that the Hakeem Jeffries. They want someone who's a lot more stronger and willing to stand up. They want, so that's the thing, that people don't want a John Fetterman or someone like that. They want someone who's going to stand up to Donald Trump. And at the moment, they can't see that in a lot of the Democratic Party, and that's why they don't do well in those polls. But in saying that, I think if there was another election tomorrow, or I think when it comes to the midterms, I still think the Democrats are going to do really well. But you want to be able to bring out your base, and the problem is that it's going to be hard for Democrats to really bring out their base. Schumer is a failure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've got to be able to bring out their base, right? And I think to bring out your base, you can't. It's going to be hard for them to do that if all they do is have people like Schumer. So they're going to need some stronger candidates who represent the base. And at the moment, I just don't think there's many candidates who do that. Also, I think in mids, you can be. I think you can be like. I think you can be like a moderate in the Democratic Party, and you can still be like a populist. You can still be someone who's who's basically pushing the base and doing that. But when I think Chuck Schumer was good for the old days when it was like Obama and politics was a lot more normal. You know what I mean, back then. But now politics is very different, right? It's politics now is more online, and Chuck Schumer, he's he's I think he's gone past his time in terms of being a leader. It needs someone more who understands new media, understands online media, understands their base, right? Understands that their base want to finish it. And you know, again, I mean, do I think the shutdown was worth it or not worth it? I think in the end of the day, I still think the shutdown was worth it, because um, and because it put healthcare on the map. Because before this, healthcare wasn't on the map. Nobody was talking about. So even though on the one hand, I think, well, what's the point of all this if they're just going to cave the way they did? I still think it's better than not doing it, only because of the healthcare thing. Because what's going to happen now is I don't think that the Republicans are going to negotiate on the ACA at all. I think it's over. I don't think Democrats are going to do another shutdown. I think that's over. Right? They've lost. They know because they know Trump. There's no limit to how Trump will go, and Trump will just basically go as far as he can. He has no. Yeah, but it's so expensive. Yeah, exactly. So I think what's going to happen is um, the Democrats are going to be able to use this as leverage in the midterms because all the prices are going to double and go up, um, and so they're going to use it. But I still don't think it was. I mean, this is the difference between Democrats. The Democrats had the Democrats got the policy that they wanted, had they got the Republicans to to extend the ACA benefit, to extend the tax benefits for the premiums, that would have been good for the American people. But it might have not been great for the Democrats because then they wouldn't have had that leverage for the midterms. But I still think you should still fight for that because at the end of the day, you can't just fight for um, what's going to benefit you at the midterms because there are people who are going to be really struggling, right? And so you can't, at the end of the day, that's how Donald Trump thinks. Donald Trump just thinks about, he doesn't care about the average person. The Democrats care a lot to the point where they capitulated, I think, because, agree, good point, still worth it. Yeah, I do. I actually do think it's still worth it because now suddenly the midterms is going to be about cost of living, housing, and now healthcare. And I don't think healthcare would have been on the agenda, right? And all those people, because I'm pretty sure most of it doubles before the midterms or goes up, is going to be a big thing. And I think when Trump and other people talk about um, making like the other day he was talking about giving like he was basically saying, well, we're going to give dividends to the American people, and he was kind of implying that he was going to do like a $2,000 stimulus check. Well, you know, I don't actually think that that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to do tax cuts, right? Um, and I think he's going to include the tax cuts he's already done. Um, so so I think from that point of view, thank you, Lorenzo, for joining. Thanks, Macanyu, for joining. Thanks, guys. But yeah, so I think basically, I think that's a big part of it. They're going to do more tax cuts and then try to pretend that they're dividends because Trump and the Trump administration keep saying that we want to give the money directly to the people instead of the health insurance companies. So to me, the check is in the mail. BS. Yeah, exactly, Levy. Exactly. Yeah. There is no check in the mail. I don't think it's going to be a stimulus check. In fact, one of the Besant, the economics advisor, basically said he basically corrected Trump on Fox News, and he said no, that could be in terms of as tax cuts. So he basically said it was going to be tax cuts or something else. So could you imagine getting like some tax cuts, right? But you no longer have proper health. The $2,000 is not going to cover what your $2,000 worth of tax cuts is not going to cover, right? Your premiums going up twice as much. Poor and so many on ACA were Trump voters and their children. Yeah, that's exactly right, Paul. Because so many of the people that are being hurt are Trump supporters. This is the astonishing thing for me, right? As an outsider from Australia, right? You have right, you have the Democrats. Most of the people this is going to affect are Trump supporters, right? So keep that in mind. You have Democrats fighting on behalf of people who voted for Trump, right? And you have Trump going against the people who voted for him. So this is the insanity of like the politics in America at the moment. The person in charge at the moment is trying to make the people who voted for him's lives worse off, and it's the Democrats who are defending those people. And I guarantee you that a lot of those full blown Trump supporters, the ones with the hats, the ones who wear, the sort of the things on the on. I live in Donna. I live in Boynton Beach near where that orange clown lives. He's a liar, but he's not well. He has dementia. Yeah, exactly, Donna. Yeah, I think he does have dementia. Um, and I think even before dementia, he's just not a nice person, right? I think the writing was on the wall in terms of like I still to this day don't understand how he got so many working class people to support him. I would never I would never understand that. Like his background, right? His background was a reality TV star. He started Trump University. Um, he started Trump University, which wasn't actually a university, and the judge called it a scam, right? So he's got a background of being a scam artist, right? Um, he didn't pay a lot. Apparently, when he built places, he didn't pay a lot of his employers or his contractors money. Um, so all this sort of stuff, like what in his background was MAGA thinking that, oh, Trump, I'm going to vote for Trump because he's a working class person. What I don't understand what they were looking at because Trump didn't get into politics at the age of 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. We had decades and decades. He was a famous person. We had decades of knowing who he was and yet somehow managed to convince working class people that someone who never looked out for other people except for himself, right, was surrounded by rich people. Um, Before the last election, inherited money. Yeah, inherited money. Yeah. This is the other thing about Trump, Levy. Um, a lot of times I realize that Trump is a bad person, right? I know that, right? And I know that he lies a lot. And I know all that stuff. But he's also a very stupid person. Like I mean literally stupid. And a lot of as I've gotten to know him more and more I've realized the stupidity level is actually much higher than I thought it was. And the reason for that is because I always thought, how is it possible? Now, some of his base, they might have a reason to be stupid. If you're born in a poor family, you have parents who don't have an education, right? You know, a lot of times it might not be the fault of the person why they don't have much education. Trump doesn't have that excuse, right? Trump was born into a rich family. His parents sent him to some of the best schools, a good university, right? Trump was surrounded by a lot of smart people, not saying all smart people, but he was surrounded by lawyers and people like that. He has no excuse to be this stupid. It's almost alarmingly impressive that he actually can be this stupid with everything that he had going for him. Um, it's impossible. Like it's almost like impossible to have that many benefits and be that stupid. Like it's I can't think of anybody else who'd gone to that many good schools, was or went to a good university, was surrounded by smart people their whole life, was born in a rich family, and is that stupid. I can't think of one person that when I hear him talk, when, when I hear him talk about like magnets, he often says that magnets die when they touch water, which is obviously not true. He that time when he was with RFK Jr., right, and they were talking about Tylenol, and they were telling that women not to pregnant women not to use Tylenol, and then Trump gets up and he says, "Well, the interesting thing is that in Cuba, they don't really have autism in Cuba, and the reason they don't have autism is because they don't have Tylenol." Now, both of these things are completely ridiculous. They do have people with autism in Cuba, and they actually do have Tylenol. It's just that it's called something different. For example, in Tylenol in Australia, we call it Panadol, right? So it's the same product, it's just called something different. But Trump doesn't realize that. He doesn't realize that it's actually called something else in Cuba. And so he thought, because it's not called Tylenol, he thinks it's not true. Um, the level of stupidity for that is incredible. Now, again, Trump would be surrounded, right, by very intelligent people. He has access to doctors and he has access to all these different types of people, and yet he still says that on national TV, right? He just says the most crazy dumb things. he says that he wants to decrease medicines by 1,500%, right? 1,500%, right? This is going to talk white supremacy and their wannabes is the most powerful force. It's all for and it's Trump's every issue. His rise, he's shameless and beyond. Yeah, you're right. And right, Coral and Paul. And the white supremacy thing is actually like there is an obsession with MAGA and MAGA media with white identity politics, right? For so many years, MAGA and MAGA media and Trump would often talk about the left being obsessed with identity politics, with BLM, with black people, women's issue, all that sort of stuff. Now that they're in power, the people obsessed with identity politics is actually the MAGA movement, right? They're obsessed with it. They can't stop talking. It's like white grievance, right? Everything that Trump does is based around white grievance. For example, he has the president of South Africa come and see him in the Oval Office a couple of months ago, right? And they're there and they're talking. Now the president is black, and Trump out of nowhere. This is again when people say to me, right? Hi, Kimmy. Thanks for joining, Kimmy. Thank you so much. When people say to me, I posted the other day that a lot of times when I post something or write an article or I do something, people will say, "You're Australian, right? Why are you so obsessed with American politics?" Now, Joe, am I late? No. I'm still going, Kimmy. Thank you. And and a lot of people will say, why are you so obsessed with American politics? And I don't understand how you could not. It's not our fault that other people in other countries can't not stop looking at at what we're seeing when we see this incredible craziness. When we see this absolute craziness happening in America. And one of these crazy things was Trump, like turning down the lights, right? So he's got next to him the South African president. Trump turns the lights down. Now it's an ambush. The South African president didn't know this was about to happen, and he turns down the lights, and then he shows a video of white people in South Africa being murdered, right? And I was like, what the hell's going on here? You just ambushed the South African person. Now, Trump could talk about murders of all these different countries, right? In South Africa, and I know South Africa pretty well because one of the biggest places that people from South Africa go to is Australia, right? We have a lot of immigrants from South Africa. So I know a lot of people from South Africa. And nobody there, whether, the white people, South Africa is a very violent country. There's no doubt about that. But it's the violence isn't just directed at white people, it's directed at everybody. So the fact that Trump is obsessed with violence, which does happen, there is violence in South Africa, but he's only concerned about the violence that happens to white people, says so much about this new administration. It gets worse, right? Only a couple of weeks ago, the Trump administration is now talking about changing its refugee policy. They want to change the refugee policy. Hi, Jim. Watching American politics is like watching a slow motion train wreck. As a Canadian, I find it hard to look away. Exactly, Jim. It's not our fault. It's not our fault. We can't look away. You can't put someone. You can't have a political party that embeds Dr. Phil into their ICE team, right? Into ICE, going around, right? Dr. Phil, the ex-reality TV star, is going around with ICE, giving hard love to immigrants, and we're supposed to pretend like that's normal. Of course, we're going to look at that. You have RFK Jr., who's talking about the benefits of heroin, but also you should be concerned about vaccines. We have to look at that. Dr. Oz, another TV doctor, is one of the top doctors there. It's reality TV stars, it's anti-vaxxers, it's crazy stuff every day. We're only human. We can't not look. So, but again, going back. So, Jim, I completely agree. It's not our fault. It's Trump. International chaos resulting from the dumpsters regime. Exactly. And the other thing, Levy, is that a lot of things that happen in America, when people say to me, oh, why do you care about what happens in America? Well, first of all, it's the clown show. You can't look away from that, right? And secondly, it's also what America is the most powerful country on the planet. Thank you for not looking away. Thanks, Kimmy. Yeah. And America is the most powerful country on the planet. It has the biggest economy and it has the biggest military. So what America does affects the rest of the world. Dave from California, Jimmy, we can't look away either, but we're in the train. Yeah. Exactly, Dave. Yeah, and I always say this. I always say this. The people I feel sorry for the most, and I'm not just talking about myself, but other Australians, are the people who didn't vote for Trump but have to live in the country. That's who I have the most sympathy for. And when I think about America, I think about myself living there as a liberal and having to, because as an Australian, I can turn it off. I can just, you know, he still affects us because he's put tariffs on us and whatever, so he still impacts my country, but he impacts my country less than he impacts the people living in America. So it would be easy for me to easier, not easy, but easier for me to walk away from it. But I just feel like whereas the world should come together against Donald Trump, the world should to come together, and help not just help get rid of MAGA, but support the people in America who are going through this. Because it's a lot of times people think about when Western countries or allies, go to war together, and like obviously, we're together on war and stuff like that. But also, we don't. It doesn't have to just be war where countries with similar outlooks come together. It could also be helping people in America just through being online, supporting them online, going after MAGA, all that sort of stuff. So I kind of feel like it's our duty as other countries who don't like MAGA to support our American friends over there. And I certainly do. I feel so bad for my fellow, especially my friends on Substack, like Kimmy and Dave and Donna and all the people who I talk to online. I feel really bad for everybody in America. So yeah. So again, but Trump's obsession with white thing is just, it's so obvious now, right? I think in his first term in 2016 to 2020, Trump hid a lot of this stuff, and I think that's okay, Kimmy. And I think is that no, yeah, that's it. That's um, I think I think I think that Trump hit a lot of this stuff in the first term that he's doing now. He's definitely worse now than he was in his first term, and I think that's because he was surrounded by a lot of establishment Republicans. And this, we're seeing now the real Donald Trump, right? This is the real Donald Trump, and it's pretty bad with the refugee policy that he's bringing in right at the moment. Um, Basically, he's going to bring it down to 7,500 people a year, which is very low for refugees, and he's going to make the majority of those spots go to white South Africans, right? So white South Africans, Sleepy Don, yeah, white South Africans are going to get the majority of the spots. Again, it's this thing, this obsession with somehow white people are like they it's like MAGA, Trump, right, and MAGA media are trying to make white people the same as black people were during Jim Crow or during all that sort of period. Like they're trying to make it out like white people are now the people who are being attacked. And we need, it's basically and you see that on Joe Rogan. You see that with Elon Musk does the same thing. And trust me, it's not a coincidence that Elon Musk is from South Africa and he does this white grievance thing as well, right? Being a white person who grew up in an affluent family in South Africa, right? He would have had these kind of ideas. He wants to recruit them like the J6s. Yeah, exactly, Kimmy. Yeah. And so a lot of these, it's almost like Trump is trying to become like this MLK figure, but for white people, right? It's almost hilarious. Like I can't help but like it's almost hilarious how stupid this is. Like, how is it possible that they are trying to convince Americans that white people now have the voice? Now, again, I'm not saying that all white people are rich. They're not. There are plenty of white poor people. There's a lot of white poor people in America, right? Poor people can lose their jobs, poor, a lot of things. So I'm not a big fan. So I do think that, I do think that what they're trying to do is they're basically trying to say is that the left only care about people who are not white and who are not male, and therefore we've been like, now, I think, so true, not a coincidence. What damage must continue to inflict must, yeah, yeah, and so they're basically trying to make it out like white people were neglected by the left, and therefore now that's not true. The only truth that I would say is not white people is that I think the left in the last 4 years did neglect young men. I think there's some truth to that. That I think they did because I have a young son, and I can tell you that young guys, right, young people, when they go online, there's more right wing people trying to bring them in than left wing groups, right? They did get ignored a little bit by left wing groups. If you look at all the big groups online, and what they're doing, these groups, is they're basically saying we feel your pain, right? And we're talking about mostly young men. And it doesn't have to be white men, but I think a lot of times it is white men. But it can be young black men as well. Is that young people in general economically don't have it as good as people my age. I'm a Gen Xer, right, or baby boomers. Just generally speaking, young people do have it harder. They're going to find it harder to get a good, well-paying job. They're going to find it harder to buy a home. Rents have gone through the roof for young people. Most people have to still live at home with their parents. So there is truth to the fact that young people do have it, I think, harder. I think they were ignored a little bit by the left. I think the reason why Donald Trump won over, yes, very alarmingly, online recruiting algorithms towards young people. Yeah, like if you look at it, Lemmy, you look at Andrew Tate, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, all these type of people. Um, there's a lot of people, and what they say is now there's a difference between Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan. I don't think Joe Rogan is as bad as Andrew Tate. I don't think they're the same thing. So I want to say that, but there is an online thing where they basically say it's okay for a young guy to want to go to the gym, to make mistakes, to say stupid things online, and we're not going to cancel you. I don't disagree with that. I think the left was a little bit too harsh on young people, especially on people young. As a Gen X person, when I was when I was a teenager or in my early 20s, I have no doubt I said stupid things, did stupid things, and I was lucky enough to live in a time where it couldn't get captured. Right? Young people now, they have social media. They do something stupid, they write it down, and then it's there for the rest of their lives. Right? So that's I do have sympathy for those people because I didn't have to experience it. And we should be forgiving. We should be forgiving for people who make mistakes. And then, no internet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but people are still going to use the internet. So, in my opinion, I think the left needs to do better with young people, especially young men, to bring them back in. And I think the way you do that is to not concentrate so much on. Um, Even Peter Thiel told Forbes the other day that capitalism is not working for young people. Yeah, exactly. And Paul, the interesting thing is that um, is I think it's not that hard for the left to get young men back or young people back, and that you do it by economics, right? You don't talk about the culture wars. You don't try to cancel them. You don't, this going after comedians because they made edgy jokes. That's got to stop. I think it already has stopped because it makes us look like we're the goody goodies and they're like the rebels, right? And if you're a young guy, you want to go with the rebels. That's just the young guy, right? You don't want to go with the people policing what people are saying in jokes and stuff like that. So I would like to see the left become the party of, okay, you can make edgy jokes, obviously to some degree. You don't have to like it, right? This is the thing with comedians. You don't have to like the jokes, right? But I don't have to like if I don't like a joke from a comedian or I find them offensive, I just don't I just don't listen to them. And I just think, well, that's someone else's thing, right? So for me, I've always thought that even like a couple of years ago and stuff like that. And I always thought it was a bad move by the left to go down that path, of trying to go after comedians, stuff like that. Especially now when I see what happens with Donald Trump, who used the FCC, right, to go after Jimmy Kimmel, to go after Stephen Colbert. Why? Because they were making fun of him, right? That they will make it that I don't think that's a good thing. So I think the left needs to bring those people back in again. Um, bring the young people in again, and I think they can do that using economics and economic ways. Things like, for example, housing. So basically, a good way to get young people in is, well, there's not enough homes, right? So the Democrats should say, "Hey, let's build homes, 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 homes. We're going to build so many homes." And when you build homes, think about who that benefits, right? It benefits young people because more supply that you have, right? The more supply that you have, the more the less prices are going to go up for homes, and rents are going to come down. And the other thing that's going to happen is who works on building sites, right? It's not just people from immigrants from overseas. There are Americans who work. There are plumbers, there are electricians, there are engineers. There are all these type of people who work on building sites, and that's going to bring in, right? That's going to bring in a lot of people as well into the MAGA movement, right? So again, I think that's good. Not into the magnet, into the left wing parties, by having young people working on building sites, engineers, plumbers, all that sort of stuff. And so you're getting, so I think building homes is a really good way for the left to get working class people, which they lost, and young people back into the Democratic Party. Because a lot of times when people say cost of living, yes, it's grocery prices. Um, Grocery prices is definitely part of it. Privately equity buying up squares of housing is a problem. Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah, yeah. But also supply. Also supply is a big problem. Yeah. You really need to get supply up. And I'm saying that also as an Australian. In Australia, we actually have a similar problem with housing, right? Not enough homes, and our prices are too high, and our rents are too high. So the centre left government is doing something it easier for the private industry to build homes, but they're also the government is building homes for people who can't afford homes, so government homes, right? They're also making it easier for investors to build homes and then rent them out. And part of the deal, so that what they do is they make it easier for people to get a loan, but part of the agreement is that you got to keep your rent prices down to a certain degree, and the government will help you get a better return. So it's all built around getting more supplies of home, making more government housing available to people. Because it's one thing to build homes, but if they're all $1 million, that's not really going to help the people at the bottom. So I think that's a really good policy to get the left wing people back into the party, that sort of thing. I think that's important. So building homes, yeah, I think is a really big way to get people in again. So and I think they're already doing that because cost of living is obviously grocery prices, all that like that. But whenever I hear a lot of people in America talk, they do talk a lot about the rent prices going up a lot. Young people can't buy a home. So I think there's a big place there for the Democratic Party to really um, to really get their foot in the door and really get young people back into the party, because I think that's important. If you look at these swing states where they lost, in because obviously you got the electoral college, a lot of the people, right? A lot of the people they lost that they need to get back are young people and working class people, and you're probably not going to get those people back um, by just by saying that Trump is bad. You of course you have to call out Trump for being authoritarian, and you have to call out that. But unfortunately, in America, there's a lot of people who don't pay attention to politics that closely, and they mostly vote on cost of living. And so yeah, so they're going to need, you've got to give people a reason to vote for, not just to vote against somebody, but something to vote for. So that's, I think, really important. You've really got to give someone a reason, because there will be people who are not paying attention to politics and they want a reason to get up and go. Zoran Mandami gave didn't he would come out and say Trump is an authoritarian, but he gave a reason to people to vote. He said to them, vote for me, you get free buses, you get rate the president. He gave people, that was his number one thing. His number one thing wasn't Trump is bad. His number one thing was Zoran Mandami, he's a bunch of reasons, and that's how Democrats win. You got to give people a reason to vote for him, not just to vote against him. Yeah. All right. So so thank you so much today. Unfortunately, it's only going to be a quick one today. So thank you so much. I'll do another one in a couple of days. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Common Sense Kitchen Table, exactly, Levy. That's what wins elections. Honestly, that is honestly what wins elections. And as much as I'd like to think people go, you know what, Trump's an authoritarian, I think there will be a lot of people who don't vote for him because of that. But I think that's not what's going to get rid of MAGA. Economics is going to get rid of MAGA, and the Democrats have a really good story to tell, and Republicans don't have a good story to tell. They have a story to tell about ballrooms and Great Gatsby parties and all that sort of stuff, right? And trying to cut SNAP, and so right at the moment, the Democrats are in a really, really good place to win this economically, in a really, really good place. Thank you, Kimmy. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I love chatting to you. I'll talk to you again. Thank you so much. Bye.